Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In today's video we're going to stay in the dining room and we're going to build a table to match the hutch that I did in a previous video. Now I have a very large family, so between my daughters, their husbands, and all of the grandchildren, we need a big table. So what I've created today is an extendable table so that it can be made smaller for smaller groups but can extend with 2 leaves in order to accommodate my large family. As always, your cutting instructions will be in the description box below, and I hope you enjoy the video. Now I'm starting this project by preparing the tabletop, and I'm using a piece of obèche, or obèche as some people call it, wood. And the reason that I've chosen this wood is because of the lovely wood grain. I started by giving it a really good sand, and then I went along all 4 of the edges and just took off that sharp edge off of the top with the sandpaper. Now this table is going to be cut into 4 pieces. The 2 ends, which will be permanent, as well as the 2 leaves. So we're going to start by measuring off each of those sections. So we'll make one measurement at 3 3/4 of an inch, 5 1/4 of an inch, and 6 3/4 of an inch. In metric, that's 95 millimeters, 133 millimeters, and 171 millimeters. And once you've got those marked on both sides, you can go ahead and draw a line in between to help you guide when you're doing your cutting. Now when the table is complete, it's important to me that all of the grains in the wood match. So when I cut these apart, I want to make sure that I can put them back together in the right order. So I'm going to mark on the back of the piece the ends as well as the top. And that should help me get the direction right when I put the whole thing back together. So I'm just marking my 2 outside edges with 2 little arrows. Now these pieces are going to be bigger than the 2 leaves inside, so obviously I know that they're on the ends, but I just want to make sure that they're going the right direction. Then I'm marking the top, and I'm making sure that I'm putting a little arrow in what will be all 4 pieces. I'm also going to number the pieces 1 through 4 from left to right. Now that all of these pieces are marked, I can go ahead and cut them all apart. You can put the 2 leaves to the side, but keep the 2 end pieces handy. The next thing we're going to do is build the apparatus for underneath the table that will allow the 2 pieces to slide apart. You'll actually need 2 of these apparatuses, but for each one you'll need 3 pieces marked A and 1 piece marked B. You'll notice that these wood dowels go all the way across both of the end pieces with about a 3/8 of an inch space on either side. You'll need to ensure that you sand these pieces really well, because what's going to happen is the top and bottom are going to be attached to one side of the table and the middle one will be attached to the other, and they'll need to slide in freely. So if you don't sand them and there's little chips or little slivers that are sticking out, it's going to catch and it's going to be very difficult to open the table and close it again with the leaves in. So we're going to start by gluing 2 of the dowels to piece marked B. And so you're going to put one on the top and one on the bottom. Be careful how much glue you use here. We don't want it seeping out from underneath into the middle section, because that's again going to cause that middle rod to not be able to move as freely as it needs to. Make sure that that rod is nice and flush against the edge of piece B. Then I would go in and clamp that piece of dowel down until it's fully dried. I'm also taking a toothpick and going in and removing any excess glue that may have seeped out from underneath that dowel. Now we can add the second dowel to the bottom. Now you can see that I've put the middle dowel in there. It's just as a spacer, it's not glued in. I want to make sure that I've got enough room for that middle dowel to move. So again, using very little glue here, spread it out well so that it doesn't seep, and we'll go ahead and attach it to the bottom of piece B. Now I'm making sure that there's a little bit of wiggle room underneath there. And once I'm sure that I've left room for that middle rod, you can go ahead and take it out. And we'll go ahead and clamp that side down as well. Don't forget to scrape out that excess glue on that second piece, and then do just another dry fit to make sure that that middle rod moves nice and smoothly. You will need to make 2 of these. I'm adding a piece of masking tape here to the middle of the 2 ends to keep them from slipping while I attach the braces. Then I'm going to take my brace piece and turning it upside down so that piece B is showing up to the top. I'm going to just line it up on the table where I think it needs to be. So again, keeping in mind that you're going to keep about 3/8 of an inch on either side of the ends, and you want to come down probably a 1/2 an inch from the top as well. Then I'm going to mark on the brace the center line where the table break is. Follow that line all the way around the bottom of the brace. This is going to help you to know where you need to stop the glue so that it doesn't get glued onto both sides of the tabletop. So I'm just going to apply now some glue just on the top of the wood dowels from that center line out. Then you can flip it over and paying attention to where that center line is, lay it down onto the bottom of the table. Repeat that same process for the second set of braces. Now I'm going to take the inside rod, I'm going to line it up with the brace, and again make a mark at the center point. I'm adding glue to just 1/2 of that center rod, making sure that I don't go past that center line that I've drawn in. Make sure that you don't have any glue seeping down on the sides of this rod. Then what you're going to do is turn it so that it is glue side down, and you're going to take the side that does not have any glue and feed that in first. You should be able to push it all the way in so that it's flush with the brace. Repeat that process for the second section. Now you can go ahead and remove the tape. Once the glue is set, you should be able to then slide the 2 pieces apart. Once you've flipped it over, you should then be able to put your 2 leaves in place and close the table. Now that the braces are installed, we're going to move on to the apron, which goes around the underside of the tabletop. So you will need your pieces marked C, D, and E for this process. So we'll start with piece C, which goes on the ends of the table. And so what you'll want to do is you'll want to leave approximately 2 millimeters from the edge of the apron to the end of the table, and then about 2 millimeters on either side of that piece as well. Then you'll bring in your pieces D and you'll lay those up against piece C. And they should end right at the inside edge of that tabletop. So we'll start by applying some glue on the long edge of piece C, and we'll lay it down on the side of the end of the table. And once that's in place, you can add the 2 pieces marked D. I'll repeat that same process on the other side. Now we just need to add the apron to the 2 leaves. And so the aprons really only need to go on the short ends of each of these leaves. And you'll do that using your pieces marked E. I slid the leaves in place so that I can line them up with the other sides of the table. I want to make sure that the apron lines up on all 4 pieces. We'll add those pieces marked E to all 4 sides of the 2 leaves. So here's our completed apron. And now that that's all together, now we need to work on some legs for the table. So we're moving on now to the table legs. So you have quite a few different options when it comes to legs for this style of table. If you're looking for a simple and clean look, you can just use a wood dowel and put one in each of the 4 corners. You could also use pedestals on both of the end pieces. This is just a simple 1/2 inch piece of wood dowel, and you could do one on either side. You could also dress up these pedestals just by adding simple little pieces of trim. I've decided to use pedestals for my table, but instead of just using a block of wood, I've dug into my stash of beads and round discs, and I'm going to try and create something that's a little bit more elegant. I'm going to start by making a base for the pedestal. So I'm just going to create a cross with each of these smaller pieces of wood. I also have these small wooden discs, and these are about 7/8 of an inch long, or about 22 millimeters. I'm going to double up 2 of them and leave one singly by itself. I'm going to take my wood dowel and my beads, and I'm just adding a little bit of glue to the wood dowel itself and adding the beads on one at a time. Make sure that the dowel and the bottom of that wood bead are nice and flush. That'll give you a bigger surface when you're gluing it onto the pedestal. And here we have all 4 beads. I'm going in with a toothpick and I'm just cleaning up any glue that's kind of squeezed out in between the beads. That way when our paint goes on, it will go on nice and smooth. I'm also using 2 pieces of this slightly larger disc. So these are about 1 3/8 of an inch in diameter, or about 32 to 33 millimeters. So I'm just going to double those up and clamp them together as well. Now that all of the glue is dried, I'm going to go in with some wood filler on some of these doubled up pieces because I don't want to see the ridge in between the two. So this is just basic wood filler, and I'm just applying it with my fingertip. And then once it's dry, you can go in and sand off your excess, and you won't be able to see that division in the 2 pieces of wood. I'm also taking an emery board and just sanding down the sharper corners on the top of that cross. Now it's time to assemble everything. So I'm going to start with the 2 doubled up sets of round discs, and I'm just going to glue the smaller one on top of the larger one. I'm always clamping as I go to minimize warping. While those are drying, I'm going to attach the single piece of the smaller wood disc to the top of the cross. Now it's time to add our stack of wooden beads. Now I want to say here, and you may be able to tell, I've gone in and I've sanded those beads down because they're very shiny, and I was a little bit worried that they wouldn't take the paint afterwards. So I've given them all a really good sand to rough them up. Now I'm adding some glue to the last piece, and we're going to stick that down on top. I wanted to make sure that not only does the pedestal stay together, that it also is level on the top or the bottom. Otherwise, it's not going to sit straight. So I'm going to be using my 1, 2, 3 blocks here, and I'm going to just sandwich this pedestal in between them and clamp them nice and tight together. Once the pedestals were all together, I was trying to decide which end would be up and which end would be down. I liked them both. I felt like the ones with the round piece on the bottom looked a little cleaner, but I didn't think that it was as interesting as the cross on the bottom. So after much thought, I ended up going with the cross at the bottom and the round piece up at the top. It's finally time for paint. So I want this table to match the kitchen hutch that I made in the previous video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the apron around the tabletop as well as the pedestal in white, and then the top of the table will be done in this burnt umber color. I've also added 2 coats of some glossy podge just to finish it off. The white took about 3 coats to get full coverage, and then of course the podge on there as well. And then of course the pedestals, which came out really nice, I thought, once they were all painted the same color. I gave the bottom of the table only 1 coat of the burnt umber, but I did not paint these sliding mechanisms. If you were to apply some paint, chances are it would then become too sticky and you wouldn't be able to slide those pieces in and out. The last step is to glue the pedestals onto the 2 table ends. And I'm going to try and get them as close to center as I possibly can in each of those pieces. And here's our finished product. So whether you're hosting a large family gathering, a smaller dinner party, or just a couple close friends, this table will be ready. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.